Now, if you move to the biblical families of faith, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, a completely different idea of the nature of creation and God. In these faiths, God is a person. He is infinite, but he is separate from the creation that he has made. He's transcendent, but he's also personal. He's not identified with his creation. His character may be seen in his creation, but he's not one with the creation. He's separate from it. Quite a different idea altogether of the nature of God and reality. Then if you look, say, at the differences between Christianity and Islam within the biblical families of faith, you'll find again radical differences. For example, in Islam, Jesus is seen as a prophet, but he is certainly not the divine Son of God, and the whole idea of him dying and giving his life for us is abhorrent to Islam. The notion of the Trinity, three persons in one God, is also something that's abhorrent to Islam. So key Christian ideas are quite radically different from Christianity and Islam. So this second feature you can see, which leads to kind of blend a religion, when examined closely, is deeply inconsistent and flawed. And the third main feature is what I'll call subjectivism. Within subjectivism is the idea that truth, and we'll put truth in inverted commas, is what you discover in your own personal experience, in your own inner self. And there's a variety of ways in which you may do that. You might do it by self-improvement, by mind control, by meditation. You might do it by drugs, or music, or some kind of extreme experience. However you discover it within yourself and within your own experience. And also with subjectivism, moral authority becomes a personal interior thing. What I feel is right or wrong, what I feel comfortable with, becomes the basis of moral and ethical decisions, without any external objective standard as a controlling factor. Now, pluralism and perspectivism and moral relativism, which are connected to it, has been given significant impetus by several sociological factors in our contemporary world. And this is partly why it's become so popular, particularly in the West. Firstly, we now live in what we call a global village. Modern electronic communications, mass communications, have brought the whole world together, have shrunk it. We are now aware of all cultures and all beliefs. It's a bit like going into a video store, and they're all there on the shelves, available for anybody to see and examine. And it seems as if when there's so many different views, how can any one be true or exclusively right? A second sociological factor is the way in which the modern city is developed and the nature of population movements around the world. We now live in a world where every major city is now a multiracial, multi-faith, multicultural city, where large numbers of specific ethnic groups have left their own indigenous culture and moved to the city and mixed and merged with other people. That's the nature of the world in which we now live. Huge population movements and urbanisation have changed the world. Multiculturalism has been the political response of liberal democracies to this new phenomena. It's their way of coping with the differences. Unless we have a tolerant society, then we'll fragment. And so exclusive views of truth can be perceived as a threat to social harmony. And that is why, of course, fundamental Islam is perceived as a threat to liberal democracies, because it is such an exclusive view. Now, Christianity is also seen by some as a threat to tolerant multiculturalism, but I think wrongly so, because there is a very big difference between social and cultural pluralism and what I'm going to call philosophical pluralism. Let me explain that. Christianity is very culturally pluralist. The New Testament says, in Christ there is neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male nor female. We are all one in Christ Jesus. Very culturally pluralist, but not philosophically pluralist, not morally or ethically pluralist. So there's a very important distinction there. So the modern city and population movements have fed the idea of pluralism and perspectivism. And a third influence is the modern consumer society. It's produced hyper-choice. I mean, how many different mobile phones can you buy with how many different programs? And so pluralism is also an economic and a consumer reality. And fourthly, there's been a loss of confidence in any big story that explains everything and that claims to interpret everything. Take Marxism or communism, for example. It claimed to interpret the class struggle, economics, power, religion, etc. It was a total view of reality, a total interpretation, a total answer. But of course it ended in secret police, in prison camps and mass murder, and in a totalitarian state. And so with the collapse of Euro-communism, its claims are now treated sceptically by people. Christianity, as a big story, is also treated sceptically by many. These so-called big stories or meta-narratives are felt by many to be oppressive. Their critics say they oppress people, they oppress women, they oppress gays, they oppress the environment, they oppress the individual. And they say that because the critics say these big stories define, restrict, prescribe, permit, forbid. And so they restrict freedom. Well, that's the claim. And the quest now is for radical freedom. In the words of Foucault, the French secularist intellectual, it is forbidden to forbid. Everything is permitted. So you can see that pluralism and perspectivism and moral relativism fits well with the social and cultural forces of our time. Now, having outlined some of the features of perspectivism and pluralism, what I want to do now is to explain the key ideas of the Christian worldview and to compare them. A worldview which is a major alternative way of viewing reality and the way the world is. And I believe a much more reasonable and realistic way. When we've done that, we'll then break for some discussion. And then in the final get-together, in the final section, we'll look at some of the major problems and inadequacies of pluralism and perspectivism as a basis for life.